Okay, let's start then. Let's start.
What's the problem of Nesirin video is not coming? I don't know. They asked that you can host her. Turn on the video. This is what they asked, technician. They asked that both of you, Elise and Gayle, you can turn on the video for Nesirin.
Okay, great.
Hi, how are you?
Okay, Nesirin, let's get started. Let's get started.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. And sorry and apologize for this technician. Some problem, it will happen always. So we would like here to welcome all of you. Thank you for this being in this panel. We are honored to have you on the behalf of our SDC office in the Syrian Democratic Council in Washington, D.C. I would like to welcome you all. And we are honored also to have all the people who are now attending us in this panel. Actually, today, our significant topic and significant also panelists whom we have today, it's talking about a very important topic, which is the liberation of Kobani from the ISIS and defeating ISIS. We know that the whole world witnessed how the brave women of the Women Protection Units, YPG, could defeat ISIS from Kobani, and Kobani became the turning point actually to end ISIS from northeast Syria. That from Kobani started the US allies with the Syrian Democratic Forces, and in the beginning with the YPG and YPG, Women Protection Units and the People Protection Units. They are allies to the US with the global coalition to defeat ISIS. Actually, these women, they show the courageous women and the brave women, they could show the people that they are able to achieve justice and freedom for the women in Syria at all. And they also, they are able to give an honorable image about the woman, which is different from the woman, the image which was in the Middle East at all. So the women in the Middle East, we know how they were not able even to hold the weapon, but whereas these women, they were very brave and they were very willing to defeat ISIS. So we saw that the United States, they are very serious also to match words with action. Together, we are very victorious in defeating ISIS. So let me first start with our very honored to have the commander of the YPJ and one of the founder of the Women Protection Units, YPJ, Ms. Nesirin Abdullah, and she is the spokeswoman also of the YPJ. Nesirin, the floor is for you, and we want to have a little bit short message because we already spent a lot of time. Thank you so much. Please, Nesirin, floor is yours. كلامك هو نسرين كلامك.
السلام عليكم جبو حمود استهبال الحاضر. از خبطيكو بريز كيلي دامشانتن از لي بيروزكم كو انجام لنا بروتوكول نيفيسان از جالك تقدير دكم كو ايرو جنين نيفيسكار كارن تكوشينا جنان توثيق بكن وتكوشينا جنا ديرو كيرا مايندا بكن اف غورنرنا من تشتكي هاري بيروزا ازوي تبريك دكم.
So greetings to everyone. We are happy and honored to be hosted in this event, in this webinar, and we congratulate this for Gayle to get it done, the book that she wrote about all the sacrifices and the struggle for women in Rojava in her book to document the history that is now being written in now.
هناك جن تبوشينا كبيرة جدا ما شاندن بس هناك جنجي جديرو كرا دهلن أذ هذا تمام كرنا أذ حموجنكو تبوشين دكن دحمو قادان دا إن كان قادة تبوشينه دا قادة شران دا إن كان دا قادة نفسكاري دا أذ وانا بيروز دكم وانا سلام دكم وأذ بيت بجن أم حمو بهفدورة كاربن هبونا جن بوجود بكن هبونا جن بناصمة بكن هبونا جن وتكوشنا قدام مشاندن واعتدار بكن أفيج بوما يا بو بمينة أفا أمجي وك يفجي أم خوا تكوشين بانن جند بينن أم وك يفجي خبردام تكوشين بانن جنان دبينن ونها دروجا ما إيرو دجزاتن وك أنزانن أم هيدنا تكوشين دن الهمبر داعشي كو وك تهديد كي مثلا سمرواتي قشتيا سرجنا قشتياجي وحتى هذا لحظة كو از بورد آخر بصدان هبالي ما يبنجي إنها دحملة تكوشين دجي خلايل داعشي وبتيبتشي جبو انتقامة هردو جني كل الشدادي ياقري داقر زوريا هاتن شيء خصن هند وسعدة.
So we highly appreciate and value the priceless efforts that have been done during this writing this book, as it was, and for everyone who is trying to document such kind of history. We appreciate everyone. Some people do it on the ground, some people do it by writing. It's all about women and her struggle to prove her rights. And specifically, we are talking now about Rojava. So the struggle is continuous, and we now currently we are in YPG. We are launching, or we are currently on ongoing campaign, vendetta campaign to revenge for the murderers Sada and Hind. And thank you, everyone.
As حموجنا بيسكار از دخوازم جيلج بخوا وكميناك تبقرن وخدي اللي تكوشنا جندا كيفن وتوثيق كرنا نادر كيفن مطلقة أما بيرنجي كاربن ببنا مسوغرديا حمو تكوشن بانتياجن.
So my message here is to everyone, to all those writers who can participate in writing history today, to keep going and keep writing as we both continue each other to write the history and to gain our rights. And this is a continuity for feminism in all the world.
ما بيسكو بريز هيلاري وبريز جيلسي خاصة بزي برين وكا مسلسلكي أم الفيدري واجي سلافدكن وأم بهيبينا أحداثي ومسلسل سر أخا روجافا كوباني وإلي تشكرن أفجي قول ميرنا من واتدار بي روجافا سلافي مجبواجي هنا وبتيبتشي سلافي مجبو جيلي هنا سرنا في حموها غالين يتجي أم بجنة بيروزبا أم سلافدكن وجبو حموجن كو تكوشين دكن جبو توسكرنا تكوشناجن أم الواجب بيروز دكن وسلافوريز جبو.
So once again, we congratulate Gayle for her book, and also we hear that the respected lady Hillary Clinton and Chelsea, her respected daughter, are on trying to make or produce a series based on this book. But our little hope was to have it on the ground in Kobani, if it was possible, or if it is possible, that would make it even better for us. And we appreciate all those who are trying to document the history that is happening now. And thanks for everyone and all the presence.
Thank you, Nesirin. Thank you, Nesirin.
Thank you, Nesirin. Thank you so much. I'm honored now to have our significant panelists. She is the best-selling author, Gayle Tzemach Lemmon, discussing today about her book, The Daughters of Kobani. And I would like to thank the moderator today with us, Elise Labott. Elise Labott, she is a leading journalist covering the US foreign policy, formerly CNN Global Affairs correspondent, and the founder of the 2.0 Media, the digital platform that aimed in inspiring the youth to solve all the today's problems or the pressing international challenges. So the floor's now for you, Elise and Gayle. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Sinam. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you, Nesirin, for that address. We're all just so inspired by the story of all the women, of all the Kurds in general in Syria, but also all the women that really led the fight. And that's what this book is about, The Daughters of Kobani. I read it in one day. I just sat down and really, you can see by all my notes here, just every page is, not only is it a page turner, but it's also this real story of women's empowerment and courage and bravery and hope. And I just took so much away from it. And we're so pleased to be talking to Gayle about this important story. Gayle, let's start by talking about how you learned about this story. You wrote that this story grabbed you in your core. Explain that to us and how it was different than the other books when you learned about the other books you were starting to write.
Well, first of all, I'm so glad to be with you. Of course, I'm so glad to be with the Syrian Democratic Council, which played such a role in this story. I spent many days in the offices all across northern Syria, sometimes in Ain Issa, sometimes in Komsu. And I just want to say what a privilege it is to tell this story and to be here with Nesirin Abdullah. Also, it's a little bit emotional when you fight so hard to tell a story and to see that the people who are part of it really see themselves reflected in it. It just means a great deal. I was called by a US special operations soldier who called me in 2016. No, yes, 2016. All the years blend together with COVID, Elise. I think I've lost complete track of time. But she called me and said, you have to come see what's happening in northeastern Syria. We're working with these women who are fighting on the front lines. They're leading in battle. They're leading men in battle. They have the full respect of the US forces that I work with. This was her saying that. And she said, and you just have to see it. The story is just absolutely breathtaking. And I first said, holy cow, tell me more. And I really tried to figure out whether this was something I could do justice to, given the expansiveness and the importance of this story. But it was absolutely her conviction that, this was something no one had ever seen before. And the minute I saw it on the ground in the summer of 2017, I had the exact same reaction.
Let's talk about the reporting of this book. I mean, talk to us about how you got this You had incredible access to these female forces. You also had incredible access to the Americans. And talk a little bit about, this is a very dangerous story to tell.
Whatever danger I face is nothing compared to everybody around me, truly. So I never really thought about that. Just one question, should I stop for translation? Or should I keep going? Sorry.
Keep going.
Okay. I hope Nesirin can understand too.
Is there someone that can help translate for Nesirin?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure that she could hear. So whatever danger I faced was nothing compared to what everybody around me had faced every single day for a half decade. This book really is about how we ended up in a situation where the United States ended up partnering and finding a deep bond with Syrian Kurds who had been really fighting to protect their neighborhoods, their towns, their streets, their homes, and who ended up doing the work of the world in fighting the Islamic State. And so the reporting process was all about trust, because I will tell you quite honestly, no one thought they had done very much that was extraordinary on either side. They thought they had done their job, which was to defeat Daesh, right? To defeat the Islamic State. But I think the mix, and this was what I had done with my first book, is what I had done, you know, I've written about women and girls since 2005. So over the course of, you know, more than a decade, writing about child marriage, girls' education, FGM, right? Young women who were standing up for themselves in all kinds of environments and truly forging their own path against the odds. And so when I went to some of the women from the women's protection units and I said, I really wanted to talk with you, they looked at everything I think I had ever done. And they said, you know, we can tell you care about women and, you know, we're willing to talk with you. But the truth was that the commanders who spoke with me, nobody thought they had done anything special, but they definitely wanted to talk to me about their friends. And that was the same as with other books I've had the privilege of reporting, which is that oftentimes extraordinary people don't think they've done anything special, but they do think their friends have great courage and they have great love for their friends. And so much of the reporting work is showing up again and again and again. My job is to earn the trust. That's my responsibility, to earn the trust of the people who share with me some of the most challenging moments they've survived and some of the most high stakes moments for the world that they lived personally. And my job is to make it personal for all of you who will have the, you know, honor of reading it.
I think that's so interesting what you say about these women didn't think that they're doing anything extraordinary, because it's just in the makeup of who they are. You in the book, you quote MacArthur's speech at West Point when you say, "Due to honor our country." This is just embedded in these women's determination to defend their homeland. You dedicate this in part to your father. Your father was Iraqi, and you write in the book how this story resonated with you, in part because of how you were raised, and you specifically talk about a conversation that you had with your father about how women are treated in society. Tell us about that.
So I come from a cultural tradition of my father, you know, being a product of the region, said, and really at home in the region. The book is dedicated to Eli, who taught me to love pistachios, Marlboro Reds, and didn't know the right taste of watermelon, because he always said the watermelon in the United States was tasteless, in his words. So my father said to me one day, I was talking about why I didn't understand something in what he had said about the way women were treated. And he looked at me and he said, "Do you really think men and women are equal?" And I remember looking at him, I was maybe 10 or 11, maybe a little bit younger. And I said, well, of course, you know, and we really had this dialogue that went on until he passed away a decade ago, where he eventually did come. He later was wearing like a Harvard Dad or something, a t-shirt. And a woman came up to him in Florida and said, "Oh, how is your son?" And he said, "Why can't it be my daughter?" And I said, "Well, it only took you 3 decades, but you really got there." So, you know, I understood the journey in 1% of what these women face. And so that's why I was so fascinated. How is it that the most far-reaching experiment in women's equality is taking place right there in this slice of Syria? And why don't we know about it more in the United States? And how is it that this has come to be? And that was really what the Daughters of Kobani set out to answer.
There's so much wrapped up in their battle, okay? And these women, the YPJ, the Kurds in general, they're kind of at the nexus of a lot of identities. They're fighting ISIS. It's, you know, an enemy, a common enemy. But what to them do you think this fight was about? Was it for Syria? Was it for a Kurdish identity? Was it for women's empowerment? Is it all of the above? Like, what is the kind of end game here for them?
Well, Nesirin and I would say Sinam and Nesirin can certainly address this. What I try to share, particularly for folks who don't know this story, is that it was about the political piece. You know, that the military piece was about the political end also, which is a world in which girls have agency in their own lives, in which you have multi-ethnic, multi-faith community living. I spoke with Murray Bookchin's daughter, who I think might be here today. I think Debbie might be here on our call. And I spent a lot of time with her asking about what motivated her father's ideas, and to see all of these ideas come together. This whole idea really, of grassroots participatory democracy with environmental awareness at its center and with women's equality very much embedded at the heart of it, was what, when you would ask, when I spent a lot of time with these women, it would come up over and over again. It was that the military fight was on the world's behalf, and it was also toward a political end.
Yeah, I want to get a little deeper into that and about Turkish leader Abdullah Öcalan and this kind of left-leaning ideology of grassroots democracy, and how this kind of shapes that's what they're fighting for. I mean, that Kurds can't be free until women are free, and there can't be environmental justice until there's equal resources. This kind of total hierarchy that in this country you'd say was really to the left of like a Bernie Sanders or an Elizabeth Warren. I find that so interesting. It
was always interesting to me that more Americans didn't know this. That this
I
was
never
what
knew.
Was right, exactly. And people who read the news every day. And obviously the book is global, but it is important for US policymakers in this moment to understand what was happening on the ground and what it looked like. And truly that this was what they held in their hearts to be what was the goal. What they were working for was self-governance, the ability to publish in their language, to speak in their language, to name children, and all these things that Sinam lives every day, that Nesirin and many of her colleagues really fought for a half decade, right? Since before there was an ISIS that was officially ISIS, right? When it was Nusra and other groups that they were up against.
I want to get into the story of Azima, one of the commanders. And these characters are so brought to life. Now, when she's fighting, she can't stop thinking of this bald man that tried to kill her. And she said, I can't let them get in my head. I can't lose focus. And there's this other time when she says that like her inner swagger of fighting him in the morning competed with her outer dread of thinking about him at night. And it was about something you said to me outside of the book. You said one thing you learned about these women is that they own their power.
Yes.
They're not there to make friends.
Yeah.
I remember Azima once told her commander, it's okay to kill women. Like this is not, these are women, and we'll get to the kind of sensibilities that they brought to the battle. But when it came time to do what must be done, the focus was there.
For many outside northeastern Syria, ISIS is an abstraction. For Nesirin, for Azima, for Nawruz, for all of these women, these were the people who came to kill them, right? There, and the thing that really struck me that was so deeply moving after hour after hour after hour of spending time with women who had led in some of the most intense battle, what the Americans would call some of the most intense warfare anybody had seen in their lifetime, was that they talked of ISIS with deep understanding. They understood the people they were facing off against. Sometimes, and they would call to them, these ISIS commanders would get on their walkie-talkie and be addressing them directly. And it was personal. And yet they did not shed their humanity. And I think that's why, if you look at the opening of the book, there's a line from Marcus Aurelius about not becoming like your enemy. And that came up over and over again, that you can't shed your humanity, that you must remember what you are fighting for at all times. And I think Azima was an example of, everyone who's read the book calls me and says, is she real? And I said, of course, she's not only real, but she's a true leader who, I want
to dig deeper on that. Okay, so we talk about the humanity of these women and their ability to kind of maintain that humanity, whether it's the friendship, the love, the understanding, the way they treated their soldiers, including the men. I almost kind of thought it's like a motherly love almost. And I think maybe that might have made them even more successful than men in terms of moderating the troops. Azima was like defending her troops like a mother would. She moved forward, even though she moved forward on the battle line. Maybe she shouldn't. She snuck out of the hospital to be with her soldiers to declare the end to the Battle of Kobani when there was a bullet lodged in her heart. I mean, I think this motherly love of these women for their troops is an asset, while the ability to keep that, you know, laser-like focus.
You know, it's interesting. I don't know. What I would say is that it was a ferocity. Like, they were very deeply committed to the people who had signed on to serve with them. And they were deeply committed to the fight. And they were deeply committed, not just to end the Islamic State, but for what they wanted. And there's a moment toward the end of the book where I asked one of the commanders, Commander Nowruz, who was saying that, you know, she was fighting for her nieces and her nephews and their future and the kind of future that they would have. And I do think that there is a relentlessness that comes with commitment that you definitely see. And it is true, Elise, you and I talked about this, that you've never seen women more comfortable with power and less apologetic about owning it anywhere in the world that I've seen. And I've had the privilege of being in many places.
And women came from Iran and Turkey to join the force. And after Kobani was liberated, this kind of spurred, you know, a women's leadership council. So, you know, as much, I think this was, you know, obviously this was a liberation movement from ISIS, but also maybe a female empowering liberation movement. And I'm wondering if you think that it isn't until women have kind of been on the battlefield alongside men. And I think you asked about this in the book. Is that what makes equality, that women are able to make that, you know, show that bravery in that way? I think sometimes you don't think of women being brave or women being courageous, but when they're on the battlefield, you know, braver than any of the men, you can't deny it.
Every man I talked to for this book would talk to me about the courage of these women. And the thing that they talked about a lot, and what the book really talks about, is the next generation of young women who grow up across communities, seeing women protect themselves and protect other people. And that comes up again and again when you talk to young people in the region. I don't want to give the illusion that everything is perfect. I'm not saying that. I mean, you know, every society is a work in progress, but what you see is this discussion among women about what their responsibility is to the next generation. And I think you couldn't write this book without also talking about that responsibility, that duty to the next generation that comes up. And then you would see, when I would visit in different bases, you know, young women who had just joined, who were there really listening to their commander stories about Kobani, about Manbij, about Hasaka, about Shadadi, right? They would talk about these campaigns and really be listening as the next generation does.
I want to talk about the U.S. Support. You know, these Kurds went into this knowing that U.S. support for Kurds in Iraq, for instance, has been very shaky over the years. And there's a moment in the book when Kobani was teetering, and I remember then Deputy National Security Advisor Tony Blinken, who's now the Secretary of State, says, "Well, there are going to be other Kobanis." And there was a discussion about whether to arm the YPJ, and they deferred to Trump, who said no. But in the end, they had to do this, not because I think of some support for the Kurds or because they wanted to defend the Kurds, but they knew these women were the only ones who could retake Raqqa.
Well, the book really talks about the U.S. policy side as a secondary storyline for those of you who are really tracking this. So the Americans needed as a ground force, a force that was capable of taking territory from ISIS and advancing, and had the will to fight, and also would not be focused on the regime, right? Would be focused on defending their areas. And the Americans come to the conclusion that this really is that the YPG, right? YPG and YPJ, later the SDF, are their best option. And in fact, there are many inside the Obama administration who said that was their only option and who fought that. And then the Trump administration comes, and they didn't say no, they said, we need to conduct our own review when they come into office. And their own review leads to the exact same conclusion. And that's when you see the fight for Raqqa begin with the SDF as the partner. And now many of those people those public officials, public servants, are going back into government inside the Biden administration today.
I want to talk about the relationship with the Americans. Essentially they're contracting these women to fight a fight that they felt that they weren't prepared, that the US wanted to get done, but really wasn't able to and wasn't prepared to undertake. And you saw, as you said, they saw them as the best option. And you had like special ops in the book, like Mitch Harmon, Leo James, Brady Fox, and even Brett McGurk, the special envoy, that they witnessed this kind of, you witnessed this kind of mix of admiration, pride, almost jealousy at how they were so determined by their mission and how they kept their humanity, and also guilt that they weren't able to do more. Like they couldn't give them the political support that they needed. But again, the kind of respect and awe of these women was just like, we should be able to.
I wanted the story to embrace the complexity of all of this. And the Americans and the Syrian Kurds, at that point, it was YPG, this was before SDF, they have shared interests, right? The Americans want to defeat ISIS, but they're not prepared to put a ground force in because the political will from the Obama administration is not there. The Obama administration feels it was elected to end wars in Iraq. I'm sorry, end wars in the region, not to begin new ones. And then you have this force that, because no one is coming in to help them, ends up becoming the sort of David versus the Goliath when it comes to Kobani, and the world starts to pay attention. It's catapulted onto the global stage. CNN can see, because the cameras in Turkey can capture what's going on in Kobani because of geography. And if you spent time and had this privilege of spending time in Kobani, you see the Turkish border is really there. You put out your left arm and it's there. And so there is this alignment of strategic interests that happens where the Americans need a ground force, and the YPG, YPJ, the women who are fighting ISIS, they need protection from the air. They can really use the support of someone from the international community who also wants to see ISIS defeated. And this all comes together in Kobani, which is why the book is called The Daughters of Kobani, which is because so many of the commanders who come out of that fight, which becomes the first time ISIS has a battlefield defeat. The first time. I think it's hard to remember that now, after so much blood has been spilled, so many lives lost, so many precious lives lost in the fight against ISIS, that in 2014, and as of Kobani, they hadn't lost. And it was really this mix of the US and the YPG that hands them their first loss.
I mean, if you haven't read the book, you have to read it. There's this like gripping story about how they're crossing the Euphrates to Najib on this kind of portable bridge. It's a page turner, folks. But I want to dig into what you just said. You know, that they're these daughters of Kobani. When it was all over, the Americans kind of remarked that they weren't talking about the destruction of their town. They were talking about its survival, and that they were willing to negotiate an end to it all, even after they had them surrounded, and took responsibility for the ISIS fighters in the end. I mean, they didn't, even after they won, they didn't, you know, they celebrated, but they did what's best for the country in terms of, you know, negotiating an end and to letting the town kind of repair itself.
And you talked about the U.S. forces. I think there was this mix. You talk about kind of guilt and envy. It was just a complex set of emotions, because they were watching. This was, I think, actually in Chidadi, that there was a U.S. soldier who's watching YPJ go in, and he talked with me at length about this mix of pride, of seeing warriors, of guilt that he couldn't go in with them and do more to help them, because he had spent his entire adult life at war and could have helped protect some of these women, or just be a fellow fighter alongside them. And awe at the kind of spirit and the hope, even that they went in to fight the Islamic State with, and the kind of determination. And so I think there was a complex set of emotions that the Americans had as they watched this fight unfold from Kobani all the way to Raqqa and then on to Baghouz.
And then in the end, on one hand, it's this really hopeful note about the liberation of Raqqa, of Kobani, of really the Syrian Kurdish area. But in the end, the U.S. couldn't stand by them because they didn't want to antagonize Turkey because of the Öcalan posters that led the move, like his ideology led this grassroots democracy movement. I feel like the U.S. didn't get it. And then the book ends on this, again, this triumphant note. And then Turkey launches the Operation Peace Spring, and the U.S. doesn't come to their defense because they don't want to antagonize Turkey after everything the U.S. did, after everything these women did for the U.S. And my heart just sinks.
So the book did its job. You know, I mean, I wanted to make, Nesirin was going to say.
Pardon, as مجبور نركبهم استعمل زي مجموعة as بيحصل كفني ومطلقة زي بشوكين.
Sorry, I have to leave this interesting debate. Of course, you will continue, and I will keep watching but offline. And thanks for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How lucky that we had her with us.
I know, that was so moving, right?
Yeah, we're just talking about this kind of triumphant, but also back to reality, back to the irony.
So I was in all over northeastern Syria, including in Hol Camp in December of 2019, and spent a lot of time with the people who are part of this story. And I'll say two things stayed with me. One is the resilience of what was built in northeastern Syria. I used to often joke when I was giving briefings in Washington that there was more hope in northeastern Syria than in northwest Washington. That there was more of a spirit of kind of pushing forward. So that was not lost, even with the Turkish-backed offensive. But the second piece is that the facts speak for themselves. Rojda, who commanded with the Americans the retaking of Raqqa from the Islamic State, the so-called capital of the Islamic State of Daesh, she leads with the Americans this whole campaign to retake a bloody and desperately awful campaign. ISIS had mined everything. They almost killed her with a drone that had a grenade strapped to it. They were units of all backgrounds were taking huge casualties because of the fact that ISIS had years to dig in and wanted to kill as many people in the end of that fight as it could, right? As the SDF fought to retake Raqqa. And then that has to go to Ainisa to defend the town against the Turkish-backed incursion. The same town she had liberated from ISIS. The same town where they had liberated Yazidis from a deeply inhuman slavery. So it speaks for itself, right? And I think now we will see as folks come back into office and this Syria becomes once again a policy question for the Biden administration. The vice president, when he was vice president, certainly Biden contended with those questions. This will come center stage.
And I just, I also just to kind of end it on a happy note, and I want to ask Sinam a question before we take a couple of audience questions, that after the fall of Raqqa, the women went home and you could see the change in the way their families saw them, especially Rojda, whose uncle and father, denied her and repressed her and made her give up all the things that she loved. But after everything she did to kind of liberate the area, when she went home, they were not only accepting of them, but looking up to them and wanting their advice. And I mean, that's really just an inspiring way they did achieve. I mean, obviously, as you said, there's a lot more to be done, but they did achieve what they were looking to do, which is to seek equality.
And if you think of the personal stories, which people trusted me with, look at Nesirin is the person you're talking about, right? She wanted to marry who she would like, that she couldn't have. She wanted to study, that she couldn't do because she was a woman. And then she ends up being responsible for protecting her homeland and then helping to protect the world from the Islamic State. And yes, I mean, it absolutely changes the way her family looked at her and certainly the community. And I think that for the women who are part of this story, so many would say to me, it is about the next generation. And that's why the book really ends on that note of asking the question, what do you want a girl born 20 years from now to know about what happened in this moment?
Okay, unfortunately, because we ran late, we're running a little bit close to time, but I want to just ask Sinam, and then we're going to answer a few audience questions. Sinam, why don't you tell us, briefly what you think is at stake here and the lessons the U.S. might have learned as the U.S. undertakes policy, not just in Syria and towards, that border area, but in terms of lessons learned for U.S. policy for going forward in conflict.
Yes. Really, it is, very important book and important story talking about. It is not just a story. It is the reality, what happened on the ground there. And it gives us a lesson that the United States allies with the SDF and before even with the YPG and YPG is a very strong allies that they can defeat the terrorists there. And this alliance should be continued in order to end the ISIS. The other one I can say even, whatever the YPG or these fighters, the SDF achieved in the region, not only in Kobani, in the other places after liberating the capital city of the ISIS, which is a very, symbolic things happen. We are ending that being the terror from all the world that threatened the entire world. We can say that in order to keep these things also, we have to be as the SDC and the Syrian Democratic Council and the Autonomous Administration, which is governing the region in the northeast Syria. I think ask the new administration now in Biden and President Biden administration that these people and the Syrian Democratic Council, the Autonomous Administration should be at the Geneva talk for the peace talk in Syria, as well as to have these also representative of these people in the Constitution Committee to shape the future of Syria. So we are worthy to be at the table and in the Constitution Committee. We fought for all the Syrian people, not only for the northeast Syria, and our fighters there, SDF, they sacrificed about 11,000 people died there in order to protect the region and protect the whole humanity there. So it's worse, and they deserve to be at the table there.
Okay. Gayle, I'm not sure that the administration is going to really agree that they should be at the Geneva process, because you wrote in the book that because of Turkey and because of those political concerns that might not be a thing. But I think the point that Sinam is making about that the US, it's not just about giving them arms or enforcements or bullets or anything. It's about that political support. Yes. It's about political support, Gayle, that I think that's, I think the US always makes that mistake, whether it's Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, that, we'll help you militarily, but what you really need is the political support.
This is going to be a question that comes up, I think, fairly quickly for the Biden administration, in part because so many of the people who really fought to put this policy in place to support the SDC, to support the SDF, are returning to public life, and I think who deeply believed that these were the people who were allied with the United States in fighting extremism and fighting ISIS and in keeping the ISIS fight ended. And so this question has not yet gone away. It is hung over this entire history since 2014, and it continues to 7 years later in 2021.
We have a couple of questions as we're just a few minutes. I think we could go about 5 more minutes. So from Cheyenne Jones, are the female fighters in the book referred to as Kurdish women or Syrian women or Syrian women? And if referred to Syrian women, why is that? I think I would say they feel they're Kurdish, but they're Syrian Kurds.
Yeah.
Not, you know, that whole idea with other Kurds, like, yes, they have a kinship, but this is a very Syrian brand of Kurdish, Kurdish rule that they're looking for.
You know, I talked to them some about this question, and certainly protecting their language, protecting their ability to celebrate their holidays, protecting the ability to govern themselves was front and center. And I know Sinam has taught, and I have talked about this, Sinam can talk about this much more eloquently, was front and center. And yet they would also stress to me that they were fighting for their neighborhoods, fighting for their towns, fighting for their ability to remain people who were able to have the freedom to exercise their own liberties. And I think that was what came out, struck me over and over again, was that they felt deeply products of their society and of their country, and yet also were deeply committed to this whole idea that the Kurds couldn't be free until women were free.
And then Anne has a question. I would appreciate if Gayle could elaborate on the justice component of the title of the book. A story of rebellion, courage, and justice.
Yeah.
What does justice mean, respectively? How do you comprehend the notion of justice for these women, as well as for the women and the people of Syria?
I really wanted to provoke the reader to ask that question of themselves. But when because it was one I thought about all the time, to Anne and to all those, thank you for the question. They deeply believed that they were getting justice for those who had been treated barbarically by the Islamic State. If you think about what the Yazidi community endured, you don't have words. Words actually fail when you think about what they faced. And so there are a lot of moments that they would talk to me about, that the women who fought ISIS would talk to me about, motivating, they're out of bullets, they're low on people, they're low on food. And what they had was their spirit, and what they had was their drive to not give up, even in the face of long odds, against men who had enslaved women. And it was this hunt for justice, for making sure that it did not go unanswered, what they had done, that was very much a part of the military piece. And I think also on the political piece, the justice piece also having, if you look at some of the structures that have been put in place, even women that are in the compact of northeastern Syria early on, but women judges handling cases that involve women. It also is that piece also.
One last quick question from Jagar Sefo. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. Thank you for this interesting event. Will you translate the book to Kurdish language? I hope so.
Yes, I'm really thrilled to announce that it will be. This happened several weeks back. It's going to be published in Rojava by a local publishing house in both Arabic and in Kurdish.
That's great news. Hopefully it'll be also translated into Turkish.
I will.
I want to ask Sinam one last question as we close. Reading this book and reading the story of these women, obviously, the struggle that the women have faced, and you've been working on this struggle too as a political leader. I'm just wondering what you took away from it, and the pride you must have felt that these are your people, and that these women are fighting for something that you too have been fighting for, and how what you took away from the book.
Really, we're very proud of these women. They could achieve a lot in defeating ISIS, in defeating the terrorism, and protecting the whole world from this terrorism. But in order to translate these victories against the terrorism, we have to keep the model of democracy, the model of equality, the model of freedom there. So we have to support these people there. How could we support them politically? As I said, to engage in the political solution, in the peace talk of Syria, as well as also I would like to ask here that we have to, the administration, the US administration should also I asked them to engage the outside actors or the regional actors who participate in having some of this war in Syria to get or to move out of Syria, so that the people there who've been displaced from their region, I mean, as in Afrin, Sherkany, and Tal Abyad, Gillespie, to go back to their cities and homes again. This is what we would like that the new administration support us, so that our people can go back to their city. I'm from Afrin. I would like to go back to my Afrin, to my place, so that it will be safe, and asking the Turkey or the other who is in this region to withdraw from the, our occupied region. And I'm very happy to read about the book. It's really very interesting. There are many of the stories which give you how strong the women are if they are having the willing to defeat their society.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I'll just say, to add on top of that, it's not just about defeating ISIS, but it's about helping the Kurds become, specifically in Syria, because I feel like while the Turkish Kurds may be fighting Turkey outwardly and, demonstrably, the Syrian Kurds are really just looking for their own kind of self-governance and equality, and looking to live peacefully. They're not fighting Turkey. They're not fighting Assad, even despite the fact that they've been oppressed by Assad over the years, because I know, as Gayle writes in the book, that they don't know what's coming next. So I really think it's just their own self-determination. And I hope that when the US looks to address Syria policy, that they also look for justice for the Kurds. So I want to thank everybody. We have a huge audience. I know we didn't get to a lot of your questions. I'm sorry about that, but we did, because of our technical difficulties, did start late, and we have some other commitments. But if you haven't read the book, you must read it. I read a lot, and it's one of the best books I've read in a very long time. It's a beautiful story. It's beautifully written. And it's an inspiring story, an important story. So I want to thank Gayle so much for writing us, for writing it, for talking to us about it. I want to thank Sinam and Nesirin for giving their perspective. And I want to thank the Syrian Democratic Council for holding this important event.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank you all, and all the people who are not able to attend. I think we are sorry for that. And we are looking forward to have more panel about this issue. Thank you so much.
Well, hopefully we can post this on your website, and so people that weren't able to watch can watch the replay. Thank you very much, everybody. That concludes our event, and go buy your book. It comes out on February 16th, and it's available for pre-order. It's a great Valentine's gift. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.